In this episode, I dive into intense subject matters that may not be suitable for all audiences. I discuss sensitive topics including mental health, trauma, addiction, and crimes against women that some listeners might find triggering. If you are sensitive to these subjects, please take care of yourself while listening. Your well being is priority, and tune in, but proceed with caution. I did this because I believe there should be capital punishment, and this is racially motivated. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Verona Investigates. And if you're new here, thanks for joining. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Verona. And just a reminder, I upload new episodes once a week. And today I'm going to tell you the story of a absolute garbage human, Jeremy Skibicki. So let's dive right into it. Today we're going to visit the lovely province of Winnipeg, Manitoba. They began to disappear in the winter of 2022. And on May 16, 2022, when a man was looking through the trash bins in North Kildona area and found the gruesome discovery of a woman's partial remains. Police closed off the scene and spent 2 days digging through the trash. The remains would later be identified as 24-year-old Rebecca Contois. It would be another 2 days later when police visited a nearby apartment rented by a then 35-year-old man named Jeremy Skibicki, and they charged him with Rebecca's murder. During the interview, he surprised police by admitting not only to killing Rebecca, for whose death he was initially arrested for, but to murdering 3 other women as well. News of Rebecca's death was not shocking in of itself. Winnipeg has long had one of Canada's highest murder rates in 2022. There were 53 murders in the city for a rate of 6.8% per 1,000 residents. That is the second highest rate in the nation behind Thunder Bay and roughly triple that of major cities like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. But Rebecca's murder, that was uncommonly disturbing. For starters, it was the brutality of it. One officer called the discovery a horrifically grisly scene. More disturbing was that at the time, police believe this was not an isolated act. The day after Jeremy was arrested, they executed a search warrant for his apartment. And based on what police had found, they said they expected more victims. If they were right, that would mean Winnipeg had its first serial killer in more than 10 years, since a man named Sean Lamb killed at least 3 Indigenous women and possibly more between the year of 2011 and 2012. We're not going to dive into the piece of shit human Sean Lamb is. That is for another episode. But spoiler alert, he's also garbage. He's garbage too. And he killed innocent, vulnerable women. But I'm not going to go on a rant about the garbage human that Sean Lamb is. Today we are going to focus our energy on the garbage human that is Jeremy Skibicki. The police would later be outfitted with replicators and began searching the Brady Road landfill, the largest in the province, which loads 5 million metric tons of waste over nearly 8 square kilometers. They found more remains on June 15th, which they later confirmed also belonged to Rebecca. By then, a portion of the city's Prairie Green landfill had stopped receiving garbage to prepare for a possible search as well. Police suspected more victims may have been left there, though this wouldn't be publicly disclosed for many months later. Spring eventually became summer, and the police investigation continued, but there was very little news. The families of the missing women were haunted by the idea that Jeremy's face was the last thing their mothers, daughters, and sisters had seen. Jeremy Anthony Michael Skibickis was adopted in Winnipeg and attended the angrily alternative high school. Former classmates recall him as a strange figure, towering tall with a head full of gray hair, even as a teenager, and a very deep voice. He exhibited violent tendencies very early on. His classmates told the Winnipeg Free Press that he seemed timid and mousy around men, but aggressive with women. Another recalls him throwing her across a room during a gathering at a mutual friend's house. So he kind of reminds me of that piece of shit that committed the Montreal Massacre. Marc Lupin, however you pronounce his name properly, his last name, that garbage human, where he was very quiet and calm near men, but showed nothing but aggression towards women. If you haven't heard that episode, that is episode 2 in this season of Crappy Humans, where we look at Canada's most infamous and notorious serial killers. Jeremy first encountered the justice system was petty. His first encounters with the justice system were petty, including forgery charges dating back to an incident in 2008. By the time he was in his mid-20s, his behavior was becoming more violent and erratic. In 2015, he was engaged to a woman and living with her in a downtown Winnipeg apartment. She became pregnant, and during an altercation in the summer, he held a knife at her stomach and threatened to kill her unborn child. A judge had sentenced him to 2 years probation and prohibited him from contacting the woman, whose name is under a court order publication ban. But Jeremy would return to her immediately. He told her he'd kill himself by overdosing on pills unless she took them first. She alleged that after she did, she fell asleep. He sexually assaulted her. She later would apply for a protection order against him again. Her request stated, "He won't stop until I'm dead." This was later denied with no explanation on why. Kudos to the asshats that denied this woman's protection order against a garbage human. Kudos to you. Good job. You suck. By the time 2017 rolled around, Jeremy had become occasionally homeless, spending much of his time in downtown in the Northeast End in South Point, Douglas. After he started spending time in South Point, Douglas, he became close with a 20-something-year-old man named Gabriel Delmore. The pair met, says Gabriel, when he was living in a tent beneath the city's Osborne Street Bridge. He claimed that Jeremy, who appeared to never have held a steady job, mostly living off of social assistance and panhandling above for money to buy his meth. Gabriel bonded with Jeremy over drugs, video games, and a shared love for music, especially classical. Isn't that interesting? How many psychopaths love classical music? That is a riddle that I hope one day gets solved. If it's not already solved, if somebody knows the answer, let me know. How many psychopaths love classical music? Gabriel said that Jeremy even played the violin at times. They differed on religion, however. Gabriel describes Jeremy as both super Christian, consistently quoting scripture, and super racist, with special enthusiasm for anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Jeremy just gets worse. Around 2018, Jeremy briefly moved into the King's Motor Hotel, a tiny, since shut down, low-rent hotel in a desolated part of South Point, Douglas. Then he found an apartment in the city's West End. Erin is a Métis woman who met Jeremy when she was living on the street, struggling with meth. At the Silmon mission one night, she was waiting for a bed to open up. She remembered that Jeremy approached her, and she thought he seemed sweet and charming. He introduced himself as David Pilskin, a riff off of Snake Plissken, an anti-hero from the film Escape from New York. Never heard of this, but Jeremy is lame. He invited her back to his place. Was too good. She knew it was a risk, but the prospect of warmth, a shower, and a comfortable bed in a private apartment was too good to pass up, as was a chance to get high. They left together. The relationship moved fast through the rest of the winter and into the spring, fueled by meth and toxic codependency. Desperate for companionship, seeking refuge from the loneliness of life on the street, Erin put up with Jeremy's escalating angry outbursts, as well as his increasingly strange behavior. One day in July at a pharmacy, he suddenly raised his voice and announced, "Can I get everybody's attention, please?" Erin had a sickening feeling. Gasp for suspense. He then reassured the crowd that he wasn't going to rob the place. Instead, he got down on one knee and proposed. Erin was so embarrassed and uncertain, but she said yes. She brought him eventually to meet her mother, who immediately disliked him. He couldn't look her mother in the eyes, and she thought he was creepy and phony. Erin says he barely spoke to her mother and sat miserably in silence if he wasn't in control of the conversation. Her mother encouraged her to break off the engagement, and then she began receiving threatening phone calls, perpetrating to be from the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys is a neo-fascist group. I'm not going to go into the details of the Proud Boys, but I'll let y'all do a Google search. Saying that they were watching her. Erin's mother. Erin doesn't know if Jeremy was an actual member, but she assumes the calls did in fact come from him. Even if Jeremy wasn't a Proud Boy, his association was frightening and fitting. By this point, he had posted Holocaust denials as well as pictures of himself in an Iron Cross, the German military medal that became a Nazi symbol in the 1930s. Getting worse every time, guys. Jeremy's just getting worse. Jeremy is a piece of shit. Jeremy claimed to be an official member of Holy Europe, a subset of a far-right movement known as the Alliance of Patriotic Parallel Movements of European Folk, which calls for the re-Christianization of Europe and its former colonies. Other posts denied the existence of graves at residential schools in Canada or insisted residential survivor stories were government fabrications. I hope Jeremy's enjoying rotting in prison. Jeremy. In September of 2018, they were married. The officiant performed the ceremony in Erin's apartment. Erin was high on meth, and their two other witnesses were strangers whose names she couldn't remember. The marriage changed nothing. Jeremy grew more violent, according to Erin, fueled by spiraling drug use. In February of 2021, Erin said that Jeremy assaulted her again. hitting her in the forehead and causing a concussion. He was charged with 2 counts of assault. According to Erin, the blow worsened her memory issues, which had started a couple of years earlier after a fall. The trial was held that December. If he was to be convicted, he would face a year in prison, but again, he escaped his consequences. The charges were stayed in part because the judge in the case dismissed Erin's testimony to be unreliable due to her memory problems. Erin said that she told prosecutors she believed Jeremy would end up killing someone if he walked free. Unfortunately, Erin was right. Jeremy moved far northeast of downtown to an apartment in a neighborhood of North Kildona, the last place he lived before his arrest, according to police. Jeremy murdered his first victim in March of 2022, a woman who's still unidentified but believed to be an Indigenous woman in her mid-20s. All 4 women were killed in Winnipeg between March and mid-May of 2022. Jeremy targeted vulnerable Indigenous women who frequented Winnipeg's homeless shelters, bringing each of the 4 women back to his North Kildona apartment, where he sexually assaulted them or forcibly confined them before strangling or drowning them in his bathtub. He has been convicted of killing Rebecca along with Morgan Harris, 39, and Marcedes Myran, 26, who were both of Long Plains First Nation. The 4th woman in the death is an unidentified woman who community leaders have given the name of Buffalo Woman. The police have said they believe she was an Indigenous woman in her 20s. Investigators believe that the Buffalo Woman was Jeremy's first kill, sometime in mid-March of 2022. He went on to kill Morgan Harris on May 1st, Marcedes Myran on May 4th, and Rebecca Contois on May 14th or 15th, police say. Rebecca's partial remains were not only found in the trash on May 16th, but more of her remains were also discovered at the Brady Road landfill in Winnipeg the following month. As for the remains of Morgan and Marcedes, they are believed to be at the Prairie Green landfills north of Winnipeg. It isn't known where the remains of the Buffalo Woman are. He explained how he was coming down from a high on mushrooms when he had killed his first victim and was on meth during the other 3 killings. Jeremy also suggested he thought he had survivor syndrome. Really, Jeremy? Really? Survivor syndrome? Somebody would get this boy a dictionary, a Google, a thesaurus, something. Pathetic. On July 11, 2004, he was found guilty of all 4 counts of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 4 life sentences with no parole for 25 years in August of 2024. Good old Canada. You get parole, and you get parole, and you get parole after 25 years. Actually, it's been happening less and less, but I think he should have been sentenced to 4 consecutive first-degree murder sentences. Sorry, not consecutive, concurrent first-degree murder. Okay, he should have been charged with 4 counts and serve his sentence concurrently, which means he would never get out. But hopefully they deemed him as a dangerous offender, because then he won't get out. He'll just after 25 years, he'll go up in front of the parole board every other year, every couple of years, and be denied. Forget Jeremy. The heinous crimes committed by Mr. Skibickis have left a deep scar in the First Nations people and his actions will be felt for generations, said Grand Chief Kathy Murick of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Jeremy's case also highlights the systematic issues affecting Indigenous women in Canada, including the vulnerability due to homelessness and poverty. The partial remains of some victims were discovered in landfills, sparking protests and a call for searches to recover additional remains. Jeremy's trial underscored the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, MMIWG, in Canada, and efforts continue to address these systematic challenges. And that, my wonderful friends, is the story of the garbage human known as Jeremy Skibicki, who is now rotting in a prison somewhere. If you enjoyed today's episode of Verona Investigates, don't forget to like, follow, and rate this podcast wherever you listen. You can find us on the socials for updates, episode content, and share your thoughts and theories. Your support means the world and keeps the investigations going. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay curious. Bye.